Need a professional website?
Okay, I think we are live.
So, okay guys, we are live now. So everybody can unmute themselves on the panel. And we already have Subhadeep join us and participant as well. And we have quite a few number of people on YouTube as well. And so welcome all. This is kind of an odd timing, I think, for everyone, either on the panel.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, and no, it's okay. It's perfectly all right. Odd timing in the sense that in terms of comfort zone, even with Ryan, for anybody else, and people who are even attending, if there are people coming online, that means they are genuinely keen to listen to you, and they are finding time. So
I promise to disappoint them.
All right, that's a good start. So welcome everybody, welcome people on YouTube as well. And before I begin, let me give you a brief intro about what we are into. So Xploring Light has been into this business of creating a platform for photo enthusiasts where they can come, share and learn together. And we've been even conducting workshops and photo tours, and we have lots of plans. Probably sometime in future, we will certainly team up with all the wonderful speakers that we are inviting and do some joint sessions as well on field once things open up. And today's session is from another one of the finest landscape photographers that we have seen, which is Ryan DYAR. So yeah, he says this, and in where he lives, this means this. So
I'm guaranteed I'm in the top 10,000. I will say that much.
Okay, so I would request today for a difference, Som to really take over and take this discussion forward, and we will all pitch in between. How about that, Som?
So that works with me. That works with me. I mean, it's
my buddy.
I know. I just did. I had this setting with everybody that let me go easy on Ryan. He's probably going to pay me for this through his tutorials. So
no, if this goes horribly, it's not your fault. It's all my fault. I suck at this stuff.
I'm doing it for the first time, Ryan. We'll fail together as friends.
Yes, we're right there, buddy. We're right there.
All right, Ryan. I mean, first of all, it's pretty much for all of us, it's going to be kind of a fanboy moment to have you. I mean, we started off with landscape, and honestly, one of the names that always came through to us is Ryan DYAR. And I'm not exaggerating that, absolutely not exaggerating. So it just feels so good to have you finally sitting in front of us, where we get to ask you questions and probably pick that fancy brain of yours, right?
Well, thank you. As much as I hate receiving compliments, it makes me feel bad. I really appreciate it. Like it's just, I thank you for being so kind to me. So.
Okay, so again, you started off with photography in 2005, and you're from Seattle.
It was later than that. It was more 2007, 2008, when I really kind of didn't have a camera where I was just taking selfies or taking skateboarding photos, you know what I mean? So it was more like 2007, 2008.
And you've always been an outdoorsy person, from what I understand. You've ventured out pretty much.
It wasn't always like traditional, like I went backpacking and I went, doing things like that. It was always, like, for me, the most outdoors things I was into was like snowboarding. I grew up next to Mount Hood in Portland. And so I'd skip school all the time and just go snowboard at Mount Hood. And so that's kind of where the outdoorsy thing planted its seed in me, I guess. It was just snowboarding and being in the mountains.
Okay. So why don't you get started, Ryan? So the first question that we have, it's a little controversial one, and I hope you have locked up your door, right? Just check the bolt once. So, and this is going to be recorded, so somebody can watch it. So the simple warm-up question for you, who is a better photography partner for you? Is it Candace or is it Miles Morgan? God, you're torn. You're torn between the choices. I know.
It's Candace.
That was going easy.
It's Candace. And I only say that because she puts up with me. And because I don't put up with Miles. Traveling with my wife is like traveling with somebody you know that loves you and who cares, and it's fun. You're making memories. Traveling and shooting with my best friend Miles Morgan is like traveling with a 13-year-old who hates you. We bicker and we make fun of each other, and it's like a sleepover at your friend's house when you're a kid. That's what it's like shooting with Miles. And also like just being pissed because he's outdoing me. With my wife, it's like, oh, love, and we're traveling and it's happy and we're making memories, and I'm reluctantly taking selfies with her. But I'd have to give it to my wife.
Great answer. You have a home to live.
We'll see how long that lasts. She might watch this back, so I'm sure I earned a little bit of points in my marriage.
Miles is not flying right now, so he can probably give you some shelter right now.
Miles is not flying. Miles right now is he's not working because the airlines are doing so bad. So he's opted to take time off of work to help the company, and he's doing good things. But Miles is just at home being a dad at 50 to his first kid, like a maniac. Just planned it all wrong. No, I'm kidding. He's a great dad, and his daughter's amazing. His wife is amazing. So happy for them.
I'm sure. So the next one, I mean, this is probably a little bit cliched. Obviously, would like to know a little bit about your journey, and you probably, 70% of all the people who are interviewing just happen to be from the West Coast, right? The Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Why such a skewed number, like when it comes to having the best landscape photographers coming out from one concentrated region? So if you can club both of them, like your journey and explain the fact.
Okay. Yeah. So my journey with photography started in high school. I took a high school photography class because I thought, hey, that's a class that would be super easy. And so I took it, and in the first few weeks, I was like, photography is so lame. Who cares about this stuff? I didn't care about it. And so I used that class it was like my last class of the day. And so I'd skip the class, say, hey, teacher, I'm going to walk around outside to take photos. And instead I'd, go up to Mount Hood and go snowboarding. And I'd bring my camera with me. But I'd skip class so many times that towards the end of the semester, I was failing the class.
I just think it's terrible. And
what's
so
that?
I used that class it was like my last class of the day.
Oh, I'm hearing myself
So I
back for some
skipped
reason.
the class. Say, hey, teacher, I'm going to walk around outside to take
Okay, pause. I'm hearing myself back in reverb.
go up to Mount Hood and go snowboard. Then I'd bring my camera.
Is somebody playing YouTube or something?
Yeah, just
Class so many
Yeah,
times.
please reduce the
It was the
mobile
end of
volume
the
or something,
semester.
YouTube volume.
I was failing the class. I just think it. And
What's
so
that?
Wow, it's like time travel.
it was like,
Yeah.
Who's playing YouTube? Oh, it's gone
Pretty
now. Okay.
Okay. Wow, I just realized how horrible I sound, by the way. You know how you hear your voice in your head and you hear your voice on video and it's like, ugh. Anyways, yeah, so I used that class as like a way to skip school early, go snowboarding, go spend time in the mountains, and come towards the end of the semester, I was failing the class. And I took the class with my two best friends who were not bad kids, and they, you know, attended school and did the work. And so it came down to this final project I had in this class where I could barely pass the class if I did really well on this final project, which was a big presentation of photography. I had done nothing. And so my buddies, Mike and Ernie, I went to them. I was like, guys, you've got to help me out. I cannot fail this class. Just give me the photos you're not going to use for your final presentation and let me use them to do my presentation. And they were like, oh, you're such a moron, but here, we'll bail you out again. And I ended up using all of their photos for this final presentation. Got an A on the presentation, just nailed it. And they got Bs. So I got an A with the photos they didn't deem appropriate for their presentation, and they got Bs. And so that's my introduction into photography. I just cheated my way through it. And now here I am cheating my way through it 20 years later with Photoshop. So that's kind of, that was how I got into it. But it wasn't until like my early 20s when I got a camera as a gift and just started using it, and finally had, you know, just that snowball effect moment where you've got a camera, you're doing things with it, and then you take a good photo. There's something that you're like, whoa, that's better than the other ones. And then that goes, why is that better than the other ones? And so you get on the internet. God bless the internet, because if it wasn't for the internet, I wouldn't be a photographer. But, you know, I got on the internet and then I found Flickr. And then I was like, whoa, there's so many incredible photographers out there. And then it just snowball effects. You just get hooked like any other type of art. So that's kind of how I got into it. As far as why there's so many great photographers, myself excluded, from the Pacific Northwest, is it's one of the few pockets of the world that offers such a broad array of types of landscapes. You know, from Portland, where I grew up and started photography, I could drive a few hours in any direction, be at the coast, be in the mountains, you know, looking at glaciers. I could be in a rainforest, I'd be shooting waterfalls. I could be in a desert that looked like Death Valley. You know, it's just, there's so much to shoot that I think the natural beauty of this region just breeds artistic expression. I know that sounds lame, but that's kind of my thought process.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So did anybody inspire you when you started off? Like,
yeah, aside from my one friend, Cameron, who I'm unfortunately not in touch with anymore, who's my best friend at the time. He's the one who put a camera in my hands, and like, he dabbled in a lot of different types of photography, but I went out on a photo trip with him, you know, into the gorge, and he was shooting photos and kind of showing me what it was about. And it wasn't until a year later that I picked up a camera myself, but he was the very first. And then once I got into it, it was Mark Adamus, just like any serious landscape shooter who started in the past 5-10 years has to credit him, just because, you know, he's pushed the art to a new level, like Galen Rowell did, and like Ansel Adams did. You know, there's been those three guys that really advanced everything. So for me, it was Mark, and then just like local, you know, photographers in the Portland area. There's 20 of us out there, you know, kind of on Flickr. We had our little groups and we shared and we, you know, met each other and learned from each other. But yeah, I'd say mostly Mark Adamus and mostly oil painters. You know, I was always into oil painting from a young age. Like landscape oil paintings was what I achieved to do, and I tried it and I sucked at it and I gave it up, and I tried it again and I gave up on it. But yeah, a lot of my influence is from oil painters.
Yeah, I mean, that brings me to my next question as well, Ryan. India is quite a contrast. We have great landscapes, but they're pretty far away from the cities. And India is a very urban dense country. You know, like the concentration of human beings in the cities is exorbitant.
Yeah.
Probably we've got like cluster of New Yorks everywhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very difficult for us to get out and shoot and even get to that beautiful spot that might be, you know, few hours drive away from our cities, right? Which you had access to, right? You would just wake up and drive, and then, you know, just to beat the traffic here probably would take 4 hours, and then probably 4 hours for commute. So it's not easy. So, and I personally believe that unless you're practicing, you're not expressing your art, I don't think you get better at it, right?
No, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, so which happened with you pretty organically. So any tips for us, you know, given that we get to do it so little over here, you know, we're constrained by the cities?
The only way I can relate, because I didn't grow up in big cities and I didn't have these issues, but the way I relate to that issue is that when I was first learning like long exposure photography, right? I did that by shooting cityscapes of Portland. I've got archives and archives of cityscapes from Portland, and I'd go up to Seattle and shoot cityscapes. And that's how I learned about long exposure photography. And that translates to night photography in general. You know, I'd go into the city at night and I'd shoot, you know, the light trails of cars and bridges and cityscapes at night. And that's kind of how I learned night photography. Before night photography was even really a thing in the landscape photography world, that's how I kind of learned about it. And so, you know, it wasn't like a thought I had of this is how I'm gonna, you know, get better at photography without going, you know, out into nature. It was like, here's something to shoot, and it turns out it translated. You know, so I think even if you're not going out into nature, you're not going out to shoot, you know, landscapes, you can shoot other things that will kind of hone your craft. You don't have to be in nature to learn how to focus stack. You don't have to be in nature to learn how to compose. You know, you can do that in the city. You know, I don't think like, you know, portrait photography or very much street photography really translates to landscapes, but cityscapes and things like that. I mean, that all travels right over. Go shoot a sunset somewhere in the city, and it's like shooting a sunset over a mountain. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I completely relate to that. I think most of us do. I mean, getting to vantage points in our cities itself is sometimes tough. So we do deal with a lot of challenges to even hone those skills. But what you said just completely so relates to us. You know, just keep shooting around you, find beauty around you, and you know, keep training your cameras on those until you reach a level where you can probably make, you know, do justice to the great scenery that lies outside the city limits, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, just shoot in the cities and look at a bunch of photography.
Right.
You know, the more photography you look at, you know, the more prepared you're going to be to in a certain situation. Oh, I remember a photo I saw of something kind of like this that I could try out. As much as I now in my career, I don't actively look at a lot of photography. I try to avoid a lot of photography because I don't want a lot of influence from, you know, people around me. But when you're learning photography, soak it all in. If you're learning music, listen to music, wide varieties of music. You know, it's kind of the same thing.
No, absolutely. One of our guest panelists actually have a question. His name is Subhadeep. He is an ardent fan, you know, admittedly a fan of you, yet another fan of you. Let all that soak in, Ryan. I think you'll have tough time sleeping tonight. But
you choose poorly.
So I'll probably pass on the buck to him so that he can ask the question himself.
Subhadeep, you can actually somehow on your video as well. You can do that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
No, not for you. Subhadeep.
Oh, sorry.
Subhadeep, you can unmute yourself and just a minute.
Hey.
Yeah. So, yeah, please.
Hello, Ryan. Big fan.
There you are. Hey, how you doing, man?
The first time I came across your portfolio, like we were just bored of it. Your audio
Did
is
you
not
say-
very good.
Your audio.
I couldn't hear you.
You cannot hear me. I said, first time I came across your portfolio in Flickr many years back.
Yeah.
We saw
What I
things which
recognize your name.
we did not even think were possible.
Yeah. By the way, I recognize your name from, I think, Flickr way back in the day.
Yeah.
Had we talked back in the day on Flickr at all?
No. We have
Okay.
you have replied to me on 500px or something.
Okay. Well, I recognize your name. Thank you for commenting and looking. But
What I wanted to ask was basically, see, your portfolio, your present day portfolio consists mainly of nature, landscapes. And then hardly in in your photos can we find any human influence. Have you not considered at this stage to shoot cityscapes and all, urban landscapes?
I have, and when I first started photography, I did a lot of cityscapes and things like that, which I was just talking about. But for me, kind of growing up in Portland and being around the busyness and all that, and when I first picked up a camera and I was learning, when I really fell in love with photography is on these long trips by myself, going into the middle of nowhere with no cell phone, no GPS beacon that could save me. It was just being out by myself. That's what I fell in love with, and that's what I got hooked on. So, I'll very poorly, still like take a camera into a city and, snap photos or, snap photos of friends and family. But I love landscape photography so much that that's all I want to do. And I also don't have the time. I've got the time. I don't have the mental capacity to learn a new type of photography.
Basically the thing is that your look is very unique. So just was curious, how would that look translate to cityscapes basically?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think it would. I think, I've obviously been influenced by a guy like Mark Adamus. You look at my work and you go, I see the Adamus influence in there. But I've spent so much of my career trying to find my own techniques and things that can set me apart. When I first came out with the light bleed stuff, back in 2012, and then that kind of hit and took off. I feel like if I were to dive into a new type of photography, I'd want to do something that is like new and fresh. I don't think I have it in me. I'm always trying. I've been working on this stupid tutorial video for a couple of years now that, I'm kind of developing my own techniques that kind of do different things with light. And it's taken me 2 years working on this thing, and I record it, give up on it, practice, record it, give up on it, practice. And I just don't have that energy for a different type of photography. I think that's for later in my life when I'm old and tired and retired, and I have the time to really check out something new and throw myself at it. But there are other types of photography that interest me. So it's just kind of, I'm just too dumb to do it, to try anything new. I'm 36 and dumb and old. I feel like I'm 60.
Ryan, one more thing. I have seen that you shoot a lot into the sun, towards the light.
Yeah.
Is that an American thing? I've seen many American photographers shooting towards the sun. Is there a thing that Americans shoot towards the sun and the Europeans do it to the sun behind their back?
I see a lot. Yes, I do. But I do see a lot of guys doing crazy backlit sand dune stuff out from, you know, your part of the world. But in general, yeah, my buddy Miles and I, we've talked about this a handful of times. He was on a trip in Norway one time with a group of people, and he saw this crazy scene with this, you know, sun coming up, you know, behind a mountain. You're looking towards the light, and he was the only American there. And he was like, "You got to stop! You got to stop the van so I can go shoot this." And everybody was like, "What are you going to do with that? It's gross. It's disgusting. It's too harsh." So maybe it is kind of an American thing. I don't know why it would be or would not be, but I only like doing it because I think it can make atmosphere and depth a lot better. You're looking towards the sun and you're seeing the layers of atmosphere getting further and further away, like from one valley to the next, or you've got, you know, the sunlight coming in from the side or from the back, and that lights up, you know, all the haziness that can be in the atmosphere. So that's kind of why I like to shoot that way, you know, if I can, towards the sun. But, you know, I'm not going to turn away a nice, perfectly lit mountain, you know, but I think it's just personal preference and my love of the work of Albert Bierstadt. A lot of his work dealt with backlit atmosphere and storms over mountains, and I've loved that stuff since I was like 14 years old.
Thanks, Ryan. I think Subhadeep had those questions. So
Thanks for the question. I appreciate that. That was awesome.
Thanks, Subhadeep. So I just want to ask you something on a little bit more philosophical level before we dive into the technical aspects of photography. And guys who are watching us, there's a surprise again by the end of the session. So stay with us. Ryan's going to throw us something, probably. Christmas came early this year, right? Very early. All right. So Ryan, this is again a little philosophical, right? And as I have personally spent a lot of time in the last 3 years in landscape photography, I've seen the area getting too competitive sometimes. I've seen some bickering, I've seen some bad mouthing here and there. To be honest with you, I won't take names. People,
yeah, for sure.
People doing a lot of comp stomping as well, right? Without giving anybody any credit whatsoever. But with you, I mean, the people I've spoken to, a lot of people in your region as well. I'm good friends with people like Noriega and TJ Thorne, so I get to speak to them sometimes. Everybody has good words to say about you, right? And even somebody like Fossati, for example, right, who's an established player in Europe, has probably nothing to do with you, has good things to speak about you, right? And I've seen that. Yeah. Where does it come from? Why do people like you, and why do people credit you in such a competitive area?
Geez, I never thought I was liked.
What could we do
by anybody
to stay this good?
Well, even Mark does that. I mean, I have even heard good words from Mark as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
that makes me feel really good, honestly. That people you've talked to, you know, even know me or like me. That makes me feel like I'm doing something right. But I think it might be due to the fact that I really don't take what I do seriously. You know, and I'm completely honest. One of the only gifts I have in my life is that I know my shortcomings as an artist, as a husband, as a father, as a man. I'm very self-aware, and that self-awareness, maybe much to my detriment, just tells me I still kind of suck at photography and I still have so much I can improve on.
It's a humility, right? It's a humility.
Yeah,
you call that being humble.
Yeah, but
great.
I wouldn't feel comfortable coming out and saying, I'm humble, guys. You got to love me. It's that I don't feel confident enough in what I do in any aspect of my life to get on the internet and go, check me out. I'm killing it, because I'm not, because I sit and I finish an image and I go, I'm pretty content with that. And then I look at it 2 days later, I'm like, why the hell did I put that on Instagram? It's so embarrassing. This is just disgusting. You know, I've got a handful of images over my career of 12, 13 years now that I like. And the rest I put out there because, you know, it's just content for social media and feeding that beast. But I don't take myself seriously. If I'm talking about myself, it's to be the butt of the joke, you know, or to make Miles the butt of the joke. You know, so I think just it gets tiring seeing people take the internet and their ego so seriously.
Yes.
You know, it's just I don't want to fall into that trap. And it's hard because you could easily fall into that trap when you've got, you know, X amount of followers and commenters, you know, just, you can't do anything wrong. And we love what you do. And half of them are bots and half of them are just trying to comment to you so you'll comment back. I don't pay attention to it. I used to pay attention to it a lot more. And then it started to make me tired of photography. And so I've just kind of like, I really stopped using Facebook. I post on Instagram and then leave. I don't look around because that's what's going to make me still like photography. And if I don't like photography, then I've lost a hobby. And now I'm a college dropout. All I'm going to do is go flip burgers at McDonald's. So I kind of have to like this for a while, you know? So
yeah.
I don't know if that answered the question.
No, absolutely. It's such an important life lesson for everybody out there, Ryan. Completely resonated. And quite honestly, you know, this is something that we discuss in the panel that you're seeing right now in terms of the price of humility, right? It can be short term, but I think in terms of the brand, I think it's more long term. The benefit outweighs the risk of being humble.
I totally think so. There's people out there who will whore themselves out and pump up their brand on Instagram, and that's going to last a year. And then it happens to all these influencers lately. You know, they pump themselves up, and then something goes wrong. They're canceled on Twitter, and then there goes your facade of a career.
Right.
You know, it's all so wishy-washy. I'd rather just be the douchebag that everybody knows I am, and just slide my career into my 60s where maybe I can retire and live in a 1-bedroom apartment.
It's all those time frame, you know, like 4 years back that there was 500 px, which was like booming like anything.
Yeah.
Then there was FB pages came in, and now it's the time of Instagram. Maybe in a year or two it will go away. So all those people calling themselves big photographers.
Yeah, absolutely. And any photographer out there who might be watching this, and there might be 3 other people watching this because nobody wants to talk to me. If you hinged your career on Instagram or a social media platform, you've done it wrong. Those fads are going to come and go. And when they go, you're going to be like, there went 80% of my income. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my mortgage? So yeah, it all comes and goes. You just, you know, free advice for any new people jumping into this: build your email list. Honestly, get a solid email list, and then you've got people who you know are interested in you. They click to sign up and give you their email address because you know they want to hear from you. You're not just something they double tap as they're scrolling while they're on the toilet. You know, it's people who you know want to be involved with what you're doing, and that's invaluable. Grow your email list. That's for anybody who's dabbling in this, doing it for a living. Biggest advice I could give.
I think that's pretty powerful, Ryan. Yeah.
I mean, it's an email list. It's not that powerful, but
I think, guys, we need to see some images now.
I was
some
just,
images.
yes, sure.
Images.
So Ryan, this is
I was
the point where you
going to-
talk about images that you'd like to showcase, and what I'm personally interested in. What I'm personally interested in is to see images which you're embarrassed about, because you want to see through your journey. And I know in a couple of tutorials you probably talk about them, and you try to glorify basically how pathetic you were when you started, right? So why not show to the world if you have them? Do you have them? And then
I didn't pull out any bad ones, but I'm sure I can find them very quickly.
testing your humility now, Ryan. It's a test of your humility.
Okay, if you give me a second, let's go into old stuff. Old stuff. Oh, here's a good one. Oh, it's so tiny. Here, let me share my screen. For some reason, it's saved really small. Share. Okay. Let me enlarge it. This is such a horrible shot. I don't think I've ever done anything more embarrassing than this. So let me give you the backstory here.
Yep.
This was, I think, 2010. Miles and I had been, my buddy Miles Morgan, he's like my best friend and photography, duo, aside from my wife. He and I went to photograph this spot that I'd never really seen a lot of other photographers take seriously. And maybe for good reason, apparently, but I was like, dude, I found this spot up on Mount Hood. We got to go. It's going to be great. We get up there, hike all the way up the mountain, and just hours of misery. And we get there and we shoot this whatever scene. And so we're sitting there and we're stoked while we're shooting it. We're super happy about it. The light was pretty good, and we had wildflowers in the foreground, and we're pumped, and we made the hike back to the car, all excited and high-fiving. And then Miles calls me the next day and he goes, hey, did you look at the stuff you shot last night? I said, yeah, I did. Why? He goes, you didn't like any of it, did you? I said, no, I hated all of it. It was just forced and gross, and the light coming across, the mountain is just harsh, and the light back on the mountain is harsh, and we've got these are called bear grass. They just come up out of nowhere like they're, wizards or something. And then the paintbrush flowers on here just non-existent. And then all this messy grass. That's a pretty embarrassing photo that I don't think has been on the internet since 2010.
One thing's consistent. Your signature is consistent from that time. It's great.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I no longer watermark my photos because it's just like, but why bother? If you put photos on the internet, they're going to be used wherever, cost of doing business. But
did you know about focus stacking back then? You shot this?
Yes, this was focus stacked.
Wow.
Very poorly. I was kind of just dabbling with it, around this time. But I'm sure if I could zoom in, you'd see all sorts of it's probably so soft around the edge of the flowers, but yeah, so there's an embarrassing one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about some of your favorite images, Ryan, just to probably break the Q&A segment and start?
Sure. Okay, so let me go back to share my screen again.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, so this is one I mostly like. I could pick out a bunch of things about this photo that I don't like, but overall, I'm fairly happy with it. It's got a really good sky with nice auroras. The main things I liked about this photo are probably something that very few other people would pick up on. It's the fact that it had rained like pretty recently, and then the skies cleared, you know, in the Arctic, things kind of move fast sometimes. So all of the big, you know, slopes of granite were wet, which allowed, you know, even the tiniest bit of light to reflect on them. So if you didn't have any of these little reflections on this mountain, it'd just be a big, you know, silhouette of darkness. And so that's the biggest thing I like about this photo, is that you can actually see some detail in there because the light of the aurora is reflecting back on the mountain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Let's see, what else I got. Here's another one from Arctic Norway. By all accounts, kind of a okay photo, but I just loved the balance here. It was just something I found on the fly. I was just walking along the shore, camera in my hand, and you know, the light was starting to look pretty good, so I was just scrambling to find anything. And I found this nice, you know, sweeping curve coming over here. I'm always kind of looking for a way to get the eye from the beginning of the photo, which I would feel like the beginning's over here, through the photo in the longest way possible. So for me, the eye goes, you know, bottom right, follows that line, top left, and then back to the top right, you know, so it kind of moves the eye through. I like that photo.
So Ryan,
Sure,
so while we speak about these pictures, couple of things I saw in both the pictures, that you dodge and burn for providing dimension to the mountains, right? That's pretty evident. The second thing that I see is that inevitably there's always foreground in your pictures, right? So
I'd say 90% of the time, yeah.
Yeah, how hard do you scout to always make sure that the foreground elements are kept, and why always dodge and burn your mountains?
For the foregrounds, it's just, if I know I'm going to be taking a wide angle shot, you know, a mountain scenic, I always like to have the foreground in there to, that's where the person feels like they can walk into the photo. You know, if I just shot just this mountain, it's like, that's a great picture of a mountain, but the viewer's not invited into it. And so I like to have, you know, a nice inviting foreground that will transition through to the background, whether that be via, you know, color contrast, or, you know, dark areas to light areas, cool areas to warm areas, you know, leading lines, S curves, things like that. For me, that's just kind of a formula that for an inviting image. As far as like dodging and burning goes, I think it's just the most useful tool in Photoshop. And I don't use the Photoshop actual dodge and burn tool. You know, I use a paintbrush on a layer set to either soft light or overlay, depending on how much contrast I want in my dodging and burning. But it's just, it's, once you realize you can dodge and burn without simply darkening and lightening, you can dodge and burn with a paintbrush with color in your paintbrush and accentuate colors as you're lightening them or darkening them. You know, sometimes if I want to darken up my shadows, I'll dodge with a cool brush. And if I'm, you know, lightening my highlights, it'll be with like a warm brush, you know, back here in the light in this mountain. You know, or if I'm dodging, you know, some red flowers in the foreground, I'll keep red in my paintbrush. And, you know, that way it's brightening, but it's not losing saturation. So it's just, it's the one tool that I say I could not live without in Photoshop.
You know, this, this composition is, I'm really looking at it and I'm getting intrigued by one particular aspect, because the way you composed the foreground, the kind of curve that the foreground rock is showing, leading your eyes to the mountain, and the way you actually created light and the way you accentuated light through your technique of dodge and burn on these these foreground rock, I think you have almost created light also as a part of your compositional element here, because it is not only the rock, but it is the light also on the rock, which is ensuring that your eyes move in a particular direction. So
yeah, that's actually a very insightful thing that even I didn't pick up on, is the light becomes a part of the composition. So you actually just clued me into something that I'll probably think about a lot in the future. So thank you. But yeah, I think the light can play a key role in the composition. You know, I definitely went through and accentuated, you know, this reflecting light on the rock in ways that help to make certain lines more dominant and point that, you know, where you want the eye to go. But actually I had never thought about it being part of the composition. That's actually, it's pretty insightful. I appreciate that comment. Thank you. Well done. Well done.
Okay.
We can move on, Ryan.
There is one,
what's that?
We can move on to the next one if you want.
Okay.
Now, there is one question regarding the this image only. There's one question from Puneet. I think you've spoken about it, but because he's asked. So in this, do you also impart color grades in your dodge and burn? I think you mentioned that, but if you can still be specific, that when you are dodging and burning on the mountain, it is warm tones that you are bringing on. So
yeah. So as far as like color grading goes, I have no idea what color grading means. It's just because I'm a dumb person. But yeah, when I'm dodging or burning, it's almost always with a certain specific color of brush. It's never with white or black normally. Yeah, and so, you know, do you want me to fess up to secrets here? This mountain here had no light on it. It was just in shadow. And so all of this was created from dodging. And so it was all, you know, I wanted to dodge this, make it look like there's light hitting this mountain. And so I sampled the color from the light over here. You know, I just said, okay, here's the color of the light at the time, which is this kind of yellowy color. And I went through and I dodged all this onto there. So that's something I play with a lot is, you know, and that's, yeah, yes. Very good point. All this in the reflection, that's all painted in. The most of the light here in the foreground is real. None of the light back here on this mountain or the reflection was actually there. And so that's where I mostly get the feedback from photographers that don't like me, which is fine. Yeah, I will be the first person to admit what I do is not pure photography. It's you know, it's digital art that is done 80% with a camera. And so hopefully if anybody watches this that might not like me, they'll be reassured that I admit that a lot of it's digital art.
Signed up for this, right?
You just answered my question.
Okay.
More of the reason that why we make a more fan of you.
Yeah, it's you know, as times change, you know, I feel like I don't feel like photography's changing so much as I feel like we've been given new tools.
Right.
You know, that if you're building a house, it doesn't matter how you build it, you're still building a house. But if you've got fancy new tools and techniques that maybe didn't exist 10, 20 years ago, you're still pretty much doing the same thing. I mean, and I'm not talking about what I do versus like somebody who, you know, is a photojournalist. That's building a house versus building an airplane. Those are two separate things. But as far as like landscape photography goes, it's not, the goal has not changed. The tools have changed. And I'm going to embrace tools, and I'm going to keep, for the rest of my career, keep finding ways to do new things that help me create what I want more efficiently and more precisely, if that makes sense.
Yes.
It really does.
Okay, cool.
And on that same context about the tool, so like what are the like typical tools that we use in Photoshop, most frequently in your photos, like luminosity mask? Do you use selective color? Do you use what are the other tools that we use most frequently? Or
Yeah, I
on
use
Android?
I use some selective color here and there, mostly when I'm trying to get like, maybe, there's some light in the photo and it's not quite as punchy as I want it. I'll use some selective color stuff. Luminosity masks, I don't think I could live without. Yeah, I use luminosity masks for literally everything. There's rarely an adjustment I make to a photo that's not done through a luminosity mask, because I'm trying to target one specific tonal value in the image. So yeah, that various ways of warping to kind of, skew the composition in a way that, this photo. So this photo, I shot this in 2010, and back in 2010, most of us weren't carrying around 14mm lenses. And same with this photo. Both of these were shot with 16 or 17mm lenses. And so both of these photos, what I decided to do was take the mountains in the background and warp them smaller. Warping is not, a lot of people play with the warp tool and they make their mountains super tall and super big. For me, a lot of the times I'm using the warp tool to shrink things, because had I had a 14mm lens when I shot this one was in 2008. Had I had a 14mm, I would have been able to have, not cut off so much of the bottom of the water here. And in the original shot before warping, these mountains were way bigger. And so it seemed like the eye skipped over the water and went straight to the mountains. So I warped the mountains to get them to push back a little bit to look smaller, which puts emphasis on the foreground water. And it just helps eye travel through the photo, not just straight to the background. So warping's a big one. I did the same thing with this. And I took the mountains. This mountain was probably this tall and this wide, with a 17mm lens. And so I just shrunk everything down in the background just to push it back and make it not so dominant. That way the foreground has a chance to draw the attention, and then you work your way through it. If that makes sense.
Yep,
cool.
It does.
What next, boys?
Okay, I think Subhadeep had one more question for you again, Ryan,
yeah.
And I don't know if you're still with us, but this is specific to your famous video tutorial, something from nothing, right? A lot of people have cited that as one of the most definitive video tutorial ever, because it just takes a blank picture and then basically produces something which is goes on to become the best shot on 500px, something like that, right? So
yeah, I'm very happy to discuss that video for sure.
So obviously you took a lot of artistic freedom to produce that, right?
Yeah.
And his question is, where do you stop, and when do you decide to basically pull off something like that? What made you work on that poor raw file?
So that, I clearly remember it. I was sitting, going through my archives, just kind of thumbing through, looking at old photos and things like that. And I saw that, and I looked at that photo and said, if I knew now what I knew then, I would have shot this photo so much differently. Because I think I took that photo on a super early photography trip in like 2007. And I was just kind of out of curiosity. I said, let me just play with this for a few minutes. And so I just opened it up and played with it. And this is not something I sat down to go, I'm gonna make this a great photo. And I even the finished version, I don't think is a great photo, but it was just kind of like a practice for me of like, let's play with this thing and the things I know now and see if we can fix it. And then about an hour into processing that photo, I thought, wow, there's a lot of stuff I'm doing here that maybe not a lot of other people would try or know to try. And so, I thought it'd be a fun idea to put a video out. I mean, let's all be honest. I'm trying to make a living. I'm not doing this to, better the world of photography. It's great that I get to do that. I love teaching photography and people sending me their before and after photos and loved what you did. That makes me feel good as an artist that a handful of people give a shit about what I do. But I also like to be able to live in my house. And so it was a way of going, let's show something to photographers that they could learn and apply to their own work and make a few bucks. And people, I got a lot of great feedback on it. I got bad feedback from one other professional photographer, and that went the way it did. But that's the only photo I've ever processed to that extent, to like really just forcing things to my will in Photoshop. Most of the time it's just a little bit of dodging and burning, slightly warped to make the mountain smaller, popping the colors, contrast, atmosphere. That's the one and only time I've ever really produced a photo that was that processed.
But Ryan, in all honesty, I think the biggest struggle all of us lesser mortals go through, lesser mortals by the way, go through is that we do not, it's okay, bear with me. So we do not have a set vision. I think obviously it's quite therapeutic to go back to old images and then apply your new skills on those, and but I think most of what we struggle with, we do not know what to produce, and we just probably try things here and there, and then okay, it looks good, let's focus on that, only to trash it later after 20 minutes of processing. So
and
one thing I've always seen in images, you've got a grand vision of how do you decide that? How do you think of vision? Envision that you have to shorten the mountain over here.
That I 100% agree with you. Is most of us, myself included, really struggle to see a scene or see a photograph you've already taken and go, what do I want this to look like when it's done? That is the hardest thing to learn as an artist. You have an idea and you go, here's what I want it to look like when it's done. And that just comes with a lot of time and patience and practice and knowing what your tastes are. I sit down at the photo I've shot and I look at it and I spend 20 minutes going, yeah, this could be different. This could be different. And I just sit down and go, okay, I've got the tools in my toolbox to build this photo into, what I want it to be.
Yeah, that's a wonderful analogy and answer that you've given. Though you've answered something already, but I still have one question which I think will be great if that you can throw more light on that. Because let us say you have you created an image, let's say some 10 years back, and it went on to be your best shot ever during those days. It won lots of awards, whatever, lots of accolades. It had a great visualization as well. Now, after 10 years, when you look back at it, do you want to change first in terms of your visualization, that you feel that you should have visualized it differently? And you want to go back and say, no, nah, this was good at that time. Now I know that this needs a better treatment. And have you done that?
Okay, and on that, can we pause for 30 seconds so I can go pee?
Yes.
Okay, and then I'll answer it when we get back. 1 second. Yeah. Talk amongst yourselves.
Ryan,
I just posted my old pictures and just asking this question.
You can ask after he comes back, after he answers.
Okay, sure.
Not an
I'm
issue.
trying to put my hand down.
Okay, so guys, everybody on the YouTube as well. So it is 2 minutes nature break, but don't enter his image and trying to find some jhadi there. It's just an image.
Jassi, you just asked my question from yesterday.
From
All
yesterday.
right, boys, I'm back.
My post from yesterday was the same,
That was
same
quick.
thing. I will never go back to my old images to edit if that is what I like.
Okay, so sorry, I worked out like right before we got on here to wake myself up, and I've been pounding water. So my apologies.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're talking about going back to old photos and being either happy or content. Do we want to leave things the way they were? Do we want to change them? Right. This photo is one of the only photos I've ever taken that I actually really love and I'm content with. For me, it was just, you know, through mostly luck and 10% skill, this came out just ideally for me. This is the type of thing I'd love to just create over and over and over. And in the 12 years since I've shot this, I've re-edited it maybe 3 times just to kind of fine tune things and improve to make it look its best. But I love this photo so much that I want it to be the best version of itself that it can, because it's so special to me. You know, so I don't always go back and rework photos, but you know, there's a handful that I enjoy them and I want them to, you know, like I've got this relationship with them, as lame as that sounds. But yeah, I just want it to be its best version of itself that it can be.
Okay, yeah, that's a wonderful answer.
Okay, Ryan, I have a question for you. Some of us have been through that phase when we were doing a lot of HDRs and super saturated images, and I've really spent the last 5 years trying to delete every evidence of those images from everywhere, from 500px or ViewBug or Flickr. And you have admitted to have that phase too, and you have showcased some of those images also. So what advice do you have for new upcoming photographers not to go there?
Honestly, I don't think there's a problem going there. I think that's just the natural progression of learning and art. Is you're gonna see something somebody else is doing and go, oh, that's super cool, I want to try that. Whether it's like some weird HDR looking stuff, which I did. I think it was Photomatics was the program for HDR when I was kind of starting photography, and everything was tone mapped and crazy looking. And for about a week, I was like, this is amazing. I love this. It's so different. It's something new and exciting. I still go through those sorts of phases. And I think everybody will go through those phases where, you know, there's a new tool for them to use and they go, I want to use this on everything. It's cool, it's new, it's fresh, it's reinvigorating me. And that's what causes the problem. Is it's easy to find these new tools and, you know, be it HDR or light bleed or whatever, and go, this is great, I'm going to use this on everything. Well, not every job requires that tool. You know, if I'm going to, you know, put a screw into a board, I'm not going to use a hammer, I'm going to use a screwdriver. That's the analogy I use. You know, so you got to use the right tool for the right job. So instead of just saying, here's all the stuff I know, let's throw it at the photo, go, okay, here's the tools I have at my disposal, which do I need to use on this photo, if that makes sense. But I would say don't be scared of trying new things and, you know, the crazy HDR stuff, because in that trial and error phase of it, you're going to pick up something. You know, I still use some HDR stuff, albeit it's through Photoshop now, Lightroom, and it's way more advanced and refined. yeah, I wouldn't shun people away from those things because you're going to learn something. You're probably going to embarrass yourself after a month or two, but you're still going to learn something. And I don't know any photographer out there who doesn't look at their photos from a decade prior and go, ugh, you know, it's just part of it.
So Ryan, on this, can I ask something?
Yeah.
By what you said, it implies that photographic vision is not static, is dynamic, is liable to change over time. So does that imply that the try and dye look is also liable to change?
Yeah, I mean, I know what I like, and I'm, you know, if we compare it to, you know, that photo I showed you earlier, the look has changed quite a bit. But as far as, you know, am I going to start?
What does the natural look like? We see your image, we know, okay, without seeing anything, there's Ryan Dyer.
I appreciate the fact that maybe a few people actually can do that because, you know, there's a lot of shooters out there doing a lot of the same things. So if I'm able to stand apart that to a few people, that really makes me happy. But I'm not looking to change. You know, I wouldn't say Ryan Dyer's look is going to be revamped for 2024. Just wait for it. It's me just knowing what I like and constantly refining how I do what makes me happy. You know, you're not going to see Ryan Dyer go, I love what Alex Noriega does, which I do. So I'm going to go do Alex Noriega. You know, I know what I like and I know what makes me happy. And, you know, so it's, yeah, it'll probably always be like, oh, there's a Ryan Dyer photo for the 3 people who actually care. But yeah, it's not so much changing, it's just evolving and refining. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, surely does.
So Ryan, I mean, I had a question around your first image, the Aurora Borealis. Was it Yukon?
This? No, this is.
Yeah, this one.
This one?
This is something that we don't have easy access to in India, right? The Aurora Borealis, because we are closer to the equator. You have to, you know, make an effort here. So some tips on shooting auroras, right? Like, because we might just go to Norway just once in our lives, right? So any tips on producing these?
Yes, the handful of things I can say about Aurora that I wish I knew the first time I shot it was it moves. When it's going good, the Aurora moves way faster than you'd imagine. You know, there's been nights where normal star photography, you're talking about 20, 30-second exposures. There's been nights shooting Aurora where a 2-second exposure blurs the Aurora. The last thing you want to do is blur the Aurora. You know, you want to have nice, refined detail in the streaks and the structure. So it's, if you shoot it, be prepared. It's not like regular star photography. It's trying to keep shutter speeds as short as possible. So you say, here's the limit I'm comfortable shooting at with my ISO, which for me, it's like 6400 max. And here's how fast my lens is, you know, 2.8. And so those 2 things, you're going to max out until you're comfortable in order to get the shortest shutter speed, you know, the exposure triangle. Short shutter speeds, put a landscape in front of your Aurora. It's great the first time you go shoot Aurora and you're like, oh, I see the sky and it's wonderful. And I did this the first time I shot the Aurora. I was so happy to see it. I just was pointing my camera straight up at the sky and go, I'm making Aurora photos. Remember, we're still making landscape photography. Put the Aurora behind a landscape. I've always thought sky should be secondary to the landscape. You know, and so it's no different between the Aurora and a sunrise or a sunset. The sky's secondary. The sky is back there for the benefit of the rest of the scene. When you're first starting doing it, if you're the type of shooter who goes and focus stacks and puts close foregrounds and everything, and you're going to do that thing, that sort of techniques when you're first shooting the aurora, you're not going to come home with much, because focus stacking in the dark is possible, but it's really tough. It has to be done really quick. So when you're first practicing aurora shooting, don't shoot a scene like this. You know, shoot something a little bit further back where you don't have to focus stack. And for the love of God, the first time you see the aurora, put your camera down for 5 minutes and just lay on your back and watch it, because it's the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. It's second to the lava that I've shot, but it's one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had with a camera. So just don't forget to take it in, because it's just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
So Ryan, this is a focus stacked image or single image?
This is a focus stacked image. So this was, let me give you an even harder focus stacked image. This is a very difficult focus stacked image. So I was off of the foreground by 8 inches, and you know, just to get those lines that were on the top of this frozen lake. And you can see here at night, I made a mistake. At night, it's really hard to get everything in focus from front to back, even when you're focus stacking. So it's close enough to my foreground that, you know, I missed this focus point down here. This area is soft, but yeah, this is a focus stacked image. And the way I focus stack my shots is kind of different than other people do it. Let me give you the rundown on Ryan Dyar's focus stacking for dummies.
Thank
so say I'm composed. I'm on manual focus, I'm composed. Here's my focus ring. I start at one end of my focus ring. You know, you can feel it kind of stop at one end. And I just go, and I just move it a centimeter or two until I get to the other end of my focus ring. And I feel it stop. That's why I focus stack. I don't do the thing where I'm, you know, looking, okay, I'm gonna set my focus point for my foreground, and then I'm gonna set one from the midground and then the background. It's slower to do it that way. Sometimes you'll miss a focus point. And so I just get all the focus points, and then I don't have to think about it. I'm shooting too many photos for sure. Like, I'll never need that many focus points. So I won't use all of them, but nobody's gone home saying, dang, I shot too many photos. But all of us have gone home going, I didn't shoot enough photos. You know, so that's how I do it. It takes 5 seconds to, you know, burn through your shots and get every focus point. That way you have all the pieces of the puzzle when you get home to put it together. You're not missing a piece, which I say that, but I still did that in this photo. So it's kind of soft in the foreground. But
why didn't you crop it, right?
Well, I think it adds to the picture as well. So
yeah, if I cropped it, then it would look like this. And then that's just split to 50-50 down the middle for me. So I'd rather have, you know, the extra lines leading in, even if they're a little bit soft. But, you know, it's just me.
It looks better, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So a small silly question: do you shoot in auto white balance, or do you use your own anything?
I always use auto white balance because, one, it's just one last thing to think about when I'm shooting, and two, I'm going to be changing the white balance anyways when I process it. So I just shoot auto. I've got a lot of friends who shoot manual white balance and preach that to the people they teach to. And if you want to shoot auto white balance, that's fine. It's just, for what I do, it's just one extra step in the field that doesn't really mean anything when it comes to the end result of the photo.
Perfect.
Thank you. I have a generic question about your image making. So when you make a final image, what is your first priority? Like, your own satisfaction as the end result of an image, or the viewers, what the viewers will think of my image, my fans will think, or what the kind of community will think of the image in general. What is your more priority to you, more important to you?
That implies that I actually have fans, like maybe I'm Justin Bieber or something, which I think there's a handful of people who are like, oh, cool, Ryan posted a photo, but the majority of the world doesn't care. So I don't think a lot about the people who are going to look at it. Like I just, if I did not do this for a living, and I talk to my wife about this all the time, if I didn't need to make money doing this, I wouldn't be posting online. I enjoyed getting the feedback and the pats on the back when I was younger, but now, just having a wife and a family and like a real adult thing going on, I don't care so much about the rest of the world. What matters to me now is inside of these walls. And so if I didn't do this for a living, I wouldn't post online. And so that allows me to go, I don't care, which is why I don't take social media seriously. When I post online, it's here's a photo of something, or it's here's a funny story that makes me look like a moron or makes my friends look like a moron. It's not, here's this amazing photo. I know you guys have been waiting to see my latest post. That I can't stand. That is, hey guys, I've been away from Instagram for a long time. I'm so sorry. I know you've been waiting. No, we're not. But yeah, so that allows me to just, I get to make what I like. Really the only people I care about my photos, the only people I care to get approval of on my photos is like my wife. I show her new photos, just say, hey, is this stupid? And then I show my best friend Miles Morgan, hey, what do you think of this? And he'll go, you really screwed up that part. You might want to change that. But otherwise, yeah, by the time it's being put on Instagram or my website, I'm like, okay, I'm content with posting that. I like it enough to put it out.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wonderful answer. Yeah. Guys, I think I have a few questions. One is that you are in the field, so can you share your absolute do's and don'ts? Like what is that you would never miss to do in your settings or your composition or the way you look at an image, and what you will never do? Strictly do's and don'ts, like maybe few that you can share.
Do's and don'ts. For the type of landscape photography that I do, and probably whoever's watching this does, do shoot manual on your camera. It just helps burn into your mind how the camera works, and you can function it just that much more quickly. Do shoot handheld as much as you can. If you don't need a tripod, ditch the tripod. I do most of my shooting handheld, which nowadays is we're capable of doing so because we can crank our ISO up pretty high and get away with it. Back in 2008, ISO 320 was like, that's getting pretty noisy, so let's shoot everything on a tripod. But shooting at ISO 1000 now is no big deal. So yeah, ditch the tripod, and then that allows you to just walk around your scene like this and get up and get down and get low, and it's starting to sound like a weird dance song, but yeah, it just allows you to work the scene easier. Don'ts.
Okay, Ryan, in your, I said 99% of images, they are pure landscape. You never use any human element or any kind of thing to emphasize the size or the whole aspect of the image.
Yeah.
Any reason? Because now everybody is using it.
That might be part of the reason why I'm not doing it, is because everybody else is. Not that I'm like super original or anything. You know, I'm a hack just like everybody else is. But
right, you have a goat. You used a goat once.
Yeah. So
yeah, in Glacier National Park.
Yeah. So I've used a goat, which
yeah, there you go.
The funny thing is so there's the big goat, and then there's the other goat back here. I have a photo that I never processed from about 2 minutes prior to this photo. They're both over here, and they're both you know what I mean? I didn't think it'd be appropriate.
Beep, beep.
I didn't think it'd be appropriate to process that one and put it in like my professional portfolio. Maybe one day I will as a joke. But I have, where'd that one go? So this one, this is one of the few exceptions to me not putting a person in the frame, because and this is my buddy Miles Morgan, if he wasn't standing there, if you take him out of the photo, you have no sense of scale. You don't know how big the rocks are in front of us. You have no scale on what's going on in the background. So for me, I'll do it very rarely if the scene needs it. You know, if it's too ambiguous knowing the scale of what's going on, you know, I'll throw my better looking photography partner, my wife or Miles, in the scene and use them just as scale. But yeah, otherwise it was never something I thought to do, you know, and then once it became trendy, I was like, oh, never thought to do that. And now it's, a lot of people are doing it. So I missed the boat there,
But Ryan, I mean, just sorry to interject. A lot of people I've spoken to, I personally do not put human elements in the frame because it somehow creates a disturbance, because I want to project how I felt. Having a human element kind of creates that additional, you know, interruption between me and nature.
yeah.
So a lot of people said that they do not do that for the same reason. Is that something that you think of subconsciously?
Yeah, I think I've thought about that. It's the same way with, like, you know, if you've got a power line or a road going through somewhere, you know, there's photos where like you can see the edge of a road and I'm like, oh, get rid of that. Because we all go out into this is going to sound so like art school kid of me, but we all go out into nature to like feel like we're out in nature and we're connecting with, you know, the outdoors, and we're getting away from the city and we're getting away from the suburbs. We're getting away from Starbucks. And so when you have little elements of like, oh yeah, that's actually like, there's probably like a, you know, a Starbucks right down the street from where this is taken, it just kind of ruins it. So yeah, I do think about that. Not so much anymore, but I did think about that a lot when I was younger, when I was just getting into photography. It was like, that's why I'm not going to include those sort of things.
Perfect. There's a lovely.
I think you were talking about the doors.
Sorry.
Right.
Ryan, is this a single shot or it's a pano?
This is a pano. This is a pano of, I think, like 10 vertical shots going across. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is something I don't do a lot of.
Do you do pano or normally?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of the panos. I do them when I feel like it's necessary. In this case, I wanted to do a pano because shooting it, you know, just single shot horizontal, the emphasis on the, you know, kind of little like U-shaped hole in the rocks I was in started to flatten out. And so I shot it, you know, like 10 horizontal shots, and that emphasized the U shape of the foreground, which I thought helped frame all the lava in the background. If that makes sense.
Yeah, true.
Cool.
Perfect.
Ryan, you were talking about the don'ts. You skipped the don'ts, things not to do on the people's end.
Don'ts. It's easy to say this. It's much harder to practice this. I don't personally go into the field. I don't go on a trip expecting to make a certain shot. you know, because then I just feel like I'm just going to work. I'm just gonna show up at 7 a.m. and try to shoot this sunrise and then go get breakfast. I like to show up to an area, you know, maybe I've looked at it on Google Earth a little bit. I've got the lay of the land. I know there's like potential over here, potential over there, but I don't go into it going, okay, here's the checklist of photos I want to make. It's, you know, and especially with places you've never been to before, don't Google what other photographers have done from those places. Get there, just look around, you know, if it's a national park or if it's, you know, a certain area that offers a lot of cool landscape photography, you know, check it out on Google Earth, get the lay of the land, that way you know where you're going. And then just get out there and look around, because you're gonna find something cool, you know. And when you're first starting out in photography, I make an analogy to learning an instrument. When I first sat down to learn how to play drums when I was a kid, I didn't sit down and start writing drums. I didn't write music. I sat down and I played along to my favorite songs. And that's how we learn, which is great. When I first started getting into photography, I didn't just make these crazy, awesome, unique images. Like I comp stomped them. I got ideas about places from other photographers. But at a certain point, you're like, you get kind of bored with that. I'm just doing what the other people are doing. You know, I'm bored of playing along to my favorite songs. I want to write my own music. And so I think it's a natural phase we all go through. And some people go through that phase faster, some people go through it slower, but it's good to get out of that habit, you know, when you feel like you can. So yeah, don't think a lot about preconceived images. Just get there and explore and trust in yourself that you can find something cool. You don't need me to find it for you. You don't need Mark Adamus to find it for you. You can find your own cool shit, because, you know, I suck. And so if I can find it, you can find it, because you're probably better than me. So, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay. No, I think, you know, a lot of us share this feeling that when you haven't really created a subconscious bias of how a composition should look like, you actually end up producing the best images, because you get to see what others might not have seen before, right? So
yeah,
completely related.
Yeah, and you have to train your eye to see in a way that you like photography. I've got all sorts of pop-ups, but yeah, you have to let your eye learn how to compose. And so if you're just copying all the time, then you're just going to copy all the time. It's not until you kind of fly out of the nest that you go, oh, I can trust my wings. Okay, I can actually fly. And then that's when like photography changes for you.
Right.
You know, you go, oh, I can do this on my own.
So what I was also interested in, Ryan, is to talk a little bit about a very controversial subject, which is Cody, what Cody did, right? And you humoring, you spraying that story all over internet. Now, I don't know if you are allowed to do it, but if you could.
Okay, so it was on the trip when I shot this photo.
Ouch.
Yeah, so I look like it was a win all the way around. So here's the story of how I got my friend Cody to drink urine on accident. So a little bit of backstory. I first met Cody back in 2009, 2010, something like that. Cody Wilson. He's a really good kid, great photographer. I was out shooting, it was 2009, 2010, out shooting in the Columbia River Gorge. And this big, tall, gangly kid, he comes running up to me and he's got his tripod and his camera. And I'm like, okay, I'm either about to be, you know, punched in the face, or like this guy's gonna, you know, feed me Cheerios or something. It was just awkward. So he comes up to me, he's like, hey, are you Adam Dyer? I said, No, man, I'm not. So I think I just saw your stuff on Flickr. I said, I'm Ryan Dyer. He goes, oh, Ryan, yeah, I was looking at your stuff on Flickr, dude. Just wanted to say hi and meet you. And we said hi, and I shook his hand, and he just ran off. And that's all I heard from him. And then a couple of years later, he hits me up. He's like, he wants to learn some processing stuff. So I go to his house and I teach him, I do some processing lessons with him. And then I don't really hear from him for a few more years until he signs up to go on a photo tour with me and the guys from the photo tours in Norway. And so I get the guest list of who's coming and see Cody's joining. I'm like, oh, I remember that kid. This will be fun. He was cool to hang out with. So he comes on the tour, and then a little while later, he comes on another tour, and then we all fall in love with this kid. He's just funny and helpful and positive and goofy. And so we finally decided to start hiring him to come help on tours with us in Norway. And so in 2018, when I shot this photo, we had hired him to come drive one of the vans because then I didn't have to drive the van. And, he could help with bags and, just help with odds and ends. And on the second day of a 10-day trip, he got really sick. He came down with a horrible cold, and but in true Cody fashion, super positive. He's working through the pain. He doesn't complain at all, but I can tell he's really sick. And so we get to, it's like 4 days later, and he's like in the middle of his cold. And we get to one of the spots we're going to shoot for a few hours along this beach on Senja. And I'm like, dude, Cody, you don't have to come help with anything. Stay in the van, get some rest, try to lay down. It's like, okay, I will, thanks. And said, if you need anything, come let me know. And then before I ran to go deal with the tour and help with guests, I said, are you drinking any water? How much water are you drinking? He says, not really enough. I'm out of water in my van and haven't had any for most of the day. And so I go to my van and we're out of water too. All big cases of water, all empty. So I take a empty bottle of water that I've been using and go to the back of my van where I saw this big, those big water jugs that have like the little nozzles.
Yeah.
You can fill things up.
Yeah.
So in the back of this diesel Volkswagen van, I go to that big water tank and I'm like, this is great that they have this here. I didn't realize the guys had this for us. So I fill up a bottle of water and I take it to Cody. And dude, you got to drink this. And I'm kind of turning into his mother at this point. Like, make sure you're staying hydrated. You sit down and you rest and you take care of yourself. Give him the bottle of water. Go back to my van to grab my backpack and my tripod and all that. And about, I don't know, a minute later, Cody storms out of his van that he was napping in. And he's, oh my God. And I'm like, dude, you okay? You choking? He's like, dude, what was that? He's like, it was water from the back of my van. There's a big jug. It's like, dude, that's not water. It tasted like nothing I've ever tasted before. And so I'm like, what do you mean? It was in the big water jug. And at this time, our Norwegian buddy, Arnold, is walking up to get something out of the van and hears us arguing about, is it water? Is it not water? He goes, what are you guys talking about? And I said, I gave Cody water from the big jug you have in the back of the van. And he goes, that's not water. And I go, what is it? Cody's freaking out now. Cody's like, I'm going to die. I've injected God knows what. I'm going to die. He's like, that's diesel fuel or diesel exhaust fuel. And Cody freaks out. He's like, he starts rocking. He's like, oh my God, dude. Oh my God, this is not good. And I'm thinking the same thing inside, but I don't want to freak him out. And so I quickly Google what's in diesel exhaust fluid. Let's say it's good that he didn't ingest any of it. He never swallowed any of it. He tasted it and spit it out. But what's in diesel exhaust fluid is something called urea. Urea kind of sounds like another word we all know that doesn't end in ia, ends in an e. Urea is basically urine. It's the same stuff that's in our pee. and so he got essentially got a mouthful of pee because I was trying to be a good friend, but because also I wanted to make sure he never called me Adam again. He's never called me Adam since. So I feel like I've got my revenge. And unfortunately, he hasn't worked with us again since. I still play video games with him all the time, though. So.
That was funny.
There's a lot to remember from that trip, including this great photo.
Yeah, with those guys from the Fulton Tours and Cody, and it's been some of the best times of my career out there. So yeah, it's fun. And we're just all goofballs.
Right. Okay. So again, just changing tracks, Ryan. This is like something that I'm personally really curious about. Your association with Marcel Van Oosten, great photographer, squeever, right? So how did you guys? And again, I have a lot of respect. You're one of the probably only wildlife photographers that I do follow because he creates. So how did you guys meet and create this? Yeah.
So when I first got started, I learned about who Marcel Van Oosten was before I knew who Mark Adams was. And I just loved his work. He was one of the first photographers I really became a fan of way back 2007, 2008. And just, I'd always had his website bookmarked in my internet browser and looked at his stuff all the time. And even though I'm not a wildlife shooter, and he does wildlife and landscapes, but he's more known as a wildlife photographer, wildlife photographer of the year so many times. But always loved that he did like a lot of stuff that was landscape photography with animals in it, right? Which I just loved. I'd love to get into that someday. But yeah, so I had always loved his work, and then one day, I woke up one morning, I think it was in 2015, and scrolling through my email. I look at my email before I get out of bed in the morning, just because I'm self-employed. And I saw Marcel Van Oosten had made a purchase of my video tutorials. I was like, whoa, crazy, crazy, crazy. And so I sent him a message saying, dude, let me give you a refund. I don't need your money. You've been a huge inspiration to me, even though I don't really do what he does at all. Right. It's very different, but I told him, you've been huge. You've been a big impact on me, even if it doesn't show. And he's like, no, happy to pay for him. Just looking to learn a few things about what people are doing. And then about 4 or 5 months later, I want to say, I got an email from him saying, hey, we're looking for somebody to run a tour for us in Namibia. We're trying to, branch out and do a few different things here, and we can't always do 2 tours in Namibia. Would you like to come out and lead one for us? And of course I said yes. I mean, if Jordan asks you to come play on the Bulls with him in '96, you're gonna be like, okay, yeah, I'm there. So yeah, I just kind of did it, and he's an awesome guy, and his wife Daniela, who helps run the company, they're awesome. And I'm supposed to be in Namibia right about now, but due to the craziness going on in the world, I'm not there. But looking forward to going back. But yeah, he's cool. He's one of the best out there, and being able to be associated with him in any sort of capacity is really an honor.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Do you take up the questions from audience, or should I?
Go ahead, Jassi. We will jump into the audience questions.
Yeah, there is one question from Hans Joner Aslaksen, I think, yeah.
Hans.
Hans.
Yes, Hans. I
He's
know
an
him.
amazing photographer himself, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's good.
So he's asking that focus stacking at night, do you choose smaller aperture when focus stacking at night? Say f4 to get more depth of field and an easier stack.
Yes, so it's kind of situation dependent. Yes, you can even close your aperture down to like f16 and just shoot the whole landscape as one focus point, and then switch over to like f2.8 and shoot the sky. But yeah, normally if I am focus stacking at night, instead of doing a bunch, you know, like 15, 20 focus points at f2.8, you know, that's one of the extreme ends. And then the other extreme end is doing one focus point at f10, f16. I kind of split the difference. So I'll try to do, you know, f5.6 to f8 and kind of find the happy medium between a really challenging focus stack and a really long exposure that wastes your time, if that makes sense.
All right. Okay.
Thanks, Hans.
Yeah. There is one question from Devarshi. He's asking that every person does not see the things the way a photographer can see. It's our sole responsibility to capture those rare moments and showcase the same to others. In order to do this, every photographer should be ethical so as not to destroy the original story of the frame. Do you believe this is being reality and showcasing? Yeah.
I think Jassi, you got stuck. So the question was that do you believe this is being talked or thought about in the world of photography?
I think it's been talked about to death. Honestly, it's a topic that
it is.
I've dealt with a million times, and the only argument I have is that I see the point. I get it. I understand wanting to capture a moment and give the viewer a moment that is exactly perfect to the scene, according to, like, you know, lens distortion and, you know, dynamic range from a camera that doesn't really represent what the eye sees. And I can understand wanting to like capture one moment and give that out. I often get called out for being unethical. Let's be honest, I'm a douchebag with a camera. If we're talking about me, I mean, and we're not talking about global politics and global warming and things like that, then we've got our priorities misaligned. But people call me unethical, and that's fine. But my only defense of myself is that I've never once denied doing any of this. I make my living showing people what I do with my photos. And so if people think I'm hiding something or being unethical because I'm misrepresenting a scene, I misrepresent. I put my artistic spin on scenes for a living in the public. So yeah, I mean, it's something to talk about, but I think that's something to talk about in the media. That's something to talk about in journalism, not in art. You know, if I were a Nat Geo photographer, I wouldn't be doing this. It'd be, you know, artistic snapshots of time. That's not what I'm doing. I'm creating art, and right there on my website, you can go look. It says my idea of creating art is changing with the times, and I take a lot of artistic liberties with what I do. So I understand both sides of it. And in fact, I've said this many times, I respect photographers who avoid heavy Photoshop and try to do straight out of camera as much as possible. I respect that way more than anything I do. So I understand the argument for that, but it's two different vehicles. We're not talking about, you know, a truck and a car. We're talking about a truck and a boat. We're in two different, you know, areas here. So it hopefully that's, you know, doesn't make me sound like too much of a douchebag, but
Yeah, it's a wonderful answer. I think if I have to extend on that, my thought on that is exactly what you are thinking. And I always say this, that until unless you are a photojournalist, which is a genre which does not actually allow you to tweak even a wee bit, until that is taken care of, I think we have the artistic liberty to do whatever we want to, because we are photographers. Then we are shooting the image. And then we are, after that, we are trying to create the image based on our vision and artistic vision. And as far as we are not editing, there's nothing wrong in it. I don't see. And people will talk about anything. It's not about whether people are talking. People will even talk about, people were even talking when you took a break right now. So that's perfectly all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody mentioned it was too quick.
By standards.
Okay, now there's one very small question by Jessica Frink on the image, that is Aurora image that is right now on display. And
first, hello to Jessica.
Hi, Jessica from Land. So she's asking whether this is kind of exposure stacked or exposure bracketed. I think she means to ask that. This particular image.
This particular image. Yeah, so at night, it depends on the situation. You know, there are exposure brackets that I do. So this was, I'm trying to think of how I shot and process this. It's been a while. Yeah, I mean, this is a brighter exposure for the land, darker exposure for the aurora than, you know, put together, just like you do sunrise, sunset, you know, kind of blending exposures. Super high ISO on this. I think the ISO here on the land was ISO 6400. The ISO on the aurora was like 1200, something like that, around there. So because the longer the exposure was on this water, the more it just blurred way too much. So yeah, it wasn't so much about dynamic range for the exposure bracketing. It was more about textures for the water, if that makes sense.
Fantastic.
Sorry, Jessica, I know I didn't answer your question.
Whom you would have any? I think we have already gone through all the YT questions, YouTube questions. If anybody has,
like one question,
I have probably one or two. So that
there are quite a few questions on YouTube actually. I mean, which came in a little earlier. Obviously, we didn't get a chance.
I think we've answered that mostly.
Okay.
I have one question here.
Answered them, I think so.
One of the like very kind of non-discussed question. Which one is your favorite shooting place in US, United States? Like, you know, which national park, like Glacier or Mount Rainier, or which one is your most favorite?
Glacier National Park, hands down. It's my favorite place in the world. Maybe not in the world, but it's my favorite place in the US for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I have heard that you have like yearly trips planned on Glacier. Yeah,
I have connections with certain places that I've been to, but none I feel is connected to as Glacier National Park. And I'm going to admit something that makes me way less of a man. But on occasion, when I've been shooting and spending a lot of time in Glacier National Park and I have to leave and go home and I'm driving out of the park, I've been known to shed a single tear because I'm like, oh, I'm just going to miss this. And that's 100% real. And I know Miles is just going to listen to this and just make fun of me so bad. But yeah, that place has a very, very special spot in my heart for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody? Okay, there's one particular question I think that has come up. I don't remember who has asked it, and I think that question keeps haunting almost all photographers, particularly landscape photographers. Is that when do you know how do you know when to stop when you're doing a post-processing thing? So, because it's very easy to get carried away, and what do you do to ensure that you stop at the right moment?
I don't know that I know that myself. There's a lot of it's kind of along the same lines of pre-visualizing what you want your shot to be when it's done. You know, you look at your shot and say, this is what I want it to be, and taking the steps to get it to that point. But it's also going, oh, I've gotten to that point, now I'm done, which is actually pretty hard to do. And what I tend to do, it's not like I ever go, boom, nailed it. It's like, okay, think I'm pretty good with it here. And then I sit on it for a day, come back to it, look at it. And most of the time I go, whoa, what did I do? But occasionally I'll sit down and go, oh yeah, I missed this. So for me, it's more of like a giving yourself time for your eyes to become unbiased. You can sit and look at a shot so much, spend 5 hours sitting and nitpicking every detail. You get so used to looking at it that you can't be objective anymore. And so you got to take a break, come back to it a day later, even an hour later sometimes. And you go, whoa, okay, this was way too dark or way too bright. Or the color palette's way messed up. So for me, it's just taking breaks, coming back, taking breaks, coming back.
That's wonderful. There's one particular question I always wanted to ask somebody, and I think you are the best person to ask. And photography has certainly changed the way we look at things. So my question to you is, how has this landscape, nature and landscape photography played part in changing the person that you are right now today?
It's played the most significant role in my life than anything else. It's, you know, I was always into being outside and snowboarding and skateboarding and you know, being outdoors and being in the mountain. But it wasn't until I picked up a camera and that gave me a reason to go get lost in the woods by myself that I really started to find myself as a human. It sounds so lame. I know this sounds like the lamest thing to say, but yeah, I really like just kind of found myself. And I was going through a really, really rough time in my life when I first got into photography. And so rediscovering who I was and what I wanted to be by myself out in nature, you know, a camera and the mountains were the vehicle for that for me personally. So yeah, I owe everything to it. And but my best friend Miles, you know, I met him through doing this, through our mutual love of going out with our cameras and in nature. My wife, that's how I met my wife, is through photography and nature. And you know, when it's time to go on vacation, a romantic vacation with me and my wife, we don't go to the Bahamas. We don't go to Hawaii and lay on a beach drinking cocktails. We go camping somewhere in the woods. You know, we go take cameras out into the forest to find a waterfall that we'd never seen before and that maybe nobody else had really shot before. And so it's been the biggest impact, not just photography, but the nature with it. It's been the biggest impact on me in my adult life, you know, starting when I was in my early 20s.
Great answer. Thanks, Ryan. Over to you, Som now.
Okay, Ryan, again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. And I know it's incredibly late over there. You're probably way past your bedtime. I don't know. I mean, do you stick around for in the night?
Yeah, I could do like 10 more minutes.
Okay, so something that, really probably interests everybody. Two things that I, like all of us wanted to get your viewpoints on. Specifically, number one, before we jump into probably the most important part, number one, being from the Pacific Northwest, like you said, you have access to Death Valley and Nevada, and then basically you've got access to the rainforests, you've got access to the mountains, great scenery. Now, obviously, because of the inherent amount of practice that you have received, do you want to share any tips? Because again, like I said, these sessions are to help bootstrap us. You give us hints in terms of what to do when you're near a waterfall. I mean, we are blessed with a lot of waterfalls in India. So any tips you want to pass on while shooting waterfalls, while shooting mountains, sand dunes, stuff to do, not to do?
Man, I suck at shooting sand dunes. So I can't give you any help on sand dunes. But waterfalls, yeah, it's just don't let your shot be just about the waterfall. Let it be also about the areas around the waterfall. Let me pull up an example here. There we go. For example, this shot. It's a shot of a waterfall,
right?
Which is obvious.
That screen is not being shared, I guess. You're only sharing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you might want to stop and then reshare. Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay. Sorry, I'm new to this whole Zoom thing.
So
yeah, so while this shot is, it's about a waterfall, but there's so much more going on than the waterfall. All the foliage over here, and even down in this corner, just everything framing in. So it's easy to walk up and just, there's a waterfall, let's point at it. But, think a little bit broader. Think about every, and I heard, I had a buddy, Cody, my buddy Cody, who I made drink piss. He went on a tour with Mark Adamus one time. He went on a few of them, I think. And he was saying that Mark had told him to break an image into 6 sections. So, top 3, bottom 3, and then make sure there's interest going on in every one of those 6 sections. And so I've thought about that a lot, over the past 5 years since Cody had told me that, which, kind of interesting. I don't feel like it's necessarily going to work on every photo. I mean, I've got some photos I really like that have not a lot of interest going on in one of the 6 sections, but it does teach you to say, what else is going on in the frame besides just walking up to a waterfall and pointing at it. So, and personally, as far as waterfalls go, I don't like the water to be so blurry for motion blur that it just looks like fog rolling through. I like some definition in it, so I try to keep my shutter speed, half a second to a second. But yeah, I don't do a lot of waterfall stuff, so I don't think I have a ton of tips there. But mountains are best, in my opinion, when there's really interesting weather. And the really interesting weather in mountains is when there are storms. The best photos you're going to get of mountains is as a storm is rolling in or as a storm is breaking up. That interplay of cloud with the mountain peaks and mountains kind of starting to poke out behind clouds and all that atmosphere is something I love to do. And so that's, when it looks gross in the mountains, there's a lot of clouds and maybe you can't even see the mountains because it's so cloudy. That's when I go, I check the weather, say, it looks like this could be breaking up around such a clock. And so I'm going to go up there knowing I'll probably not get anything, maybe not even be able to see the mountains, but knowing on that off chance that the storm breaks up at just the right time, that's going to make for a much better source of light and atmosphere than going up when the skies are clear or when you've got really high thin clouds. Yeah, I just love storms and mountains. That's a big one.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you for such a wonderful and insightful answer.
Yeah. Yep.
So the last one that I had for you was, I don't know if you have got Photoshop open, probably, your typical workflow. If you have a PSD open, just if you want to spill the beans and
spill the beans.
And then probably just throw some breadcrumbs towards your video tutorials, because that's going to be the last announcement, right? We'll create the suspense and leave the audience to buy the tutorials. How about that, Ryan?
Okay. Let me see.
Suspenseful night.
Let's see.
Your dad's on. Your dad's on, by the way.
Oh, my pops. What's up, Dad? He's up late. I can't type sun. Okay. If I can find this freaking file. Bear with me, people. It's late. Yeah. I'm tired.
You want to show probably the before and after, and some of the tips, or and then
yeah. So yeah, I'm opening this one. This will be a good one. Yeah. I'll kind of I'm opening a finished file that has all the layers in it.
Okay.
So I always save all my images with all the layers. That way I know what I've done to the photo, and if I work on it and I come back to it a week later and I go, hate it, I need to start from earlier and redo it. I have all my layers. I can go back to wherever I want in the photo and restart it.
What backup do you use, Ryan? What backup do you use?
I use Backblaze.
Backblaze,
that would be, yeah. It's like $5 a month. Right. It works well. I've had to put them to the test. So it's $5 a month, and I lost a hard drive, and I could go in and either re-download all the stuff that was from that drive for free, or I think for $59, I just, I was able to get a brand new hard drive with all my stuff on it, within like 3 days. Yeah, so I do that, and then I also have like behind, so I've got this iMac and then this iMac. Behind there, I've got a wall of hard drives. So it's all double backed up, and then also all backed up on Backblaze. Okay, can you see my Photoshop screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. New share. Okay.
Yeah.
See it now? All right. Okay, so that's basically the raw file with a few little adjustments, and that's where it ended up. So you can see I kind of made the mount a little bit smaller, a little bit lower, and just pushed it back a little bit, and did quite a bit with the light.
Wow.
So all the light on the side of this mountain, all the light hitting up here. I worked all that in, and that's all natural light direction. And anybody who doesn't like Photoshop, I would suggest log off now and avoid sending me an angry email. I won't reply, so don't bother. Yeah, so I'll just walk through these real quick. So big adjustment there. Warp. That warp to make the mountain smaller. I'm not trying to make it bigger or pointier. I'm trying to make it smaller so it looked like it was shot, with a wider lens. It just felt way too dominant. I go straight to it. So that just puts it back in the background more. A little bit of light. These are all dodge burn layers. Starting to work the light in there on the peak. More. So all of these are all dodge burn layers. I mean, that's the majority of what I do. It's all dodge burn. Even that light out over there, a little bit more. So with the light bleed stuff, I used to, when I first started doing it, I always would do like just this big blob of light coming in from the right. Nowadays, when I do the light bleed stuff, it's a lot more refined and directional. It's not like just a big orange orb floating over there. So that popped the flowers. Maybe too much, if I'm honest. They look a little bit nuclear. A little bit extra light. Orton effect just to the highlights of the image. A little bit of contrast. Even out the light a little bit more.
Wow, that's too many layers.
Yeah, it's well, it was with a and that's the end of it. But yeah, I was with a, this is with a Canon 5D Mark II back in 2010, I want to say. So I mean, it's only 3.5 gigs. It's not that bad. But let me just give the before and after again. So 75% of that was all dodge burn stuff. So it's mostly that, a little bit of Orton effect here and there, a little bit of texture adjustments and light bleed. And you create a very predictable Ryan Dyer photo.
Lovely. I just noticed you are using TK panel, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so all your masking is through that panel.
No, not all of it. A lot of the contrast and stuff is, some of the dodging and burning is, but yeah, and shout out to Tony Kuiper, because I remember when he first came out with the TK action panels, like way back in the day, 2008 is when I first heard about it. And it was mind blowing that all of a sudden you could make selections based off of values. And it was unreal. And it took me a year and a half to learn how to use them, because it was just actions and then like a PDF you could read that would put you to sleep in the first 5 minutes. But what he's able to have done with his company in creating these panels is just mind-blowing. He's forever changed the game, and I love to give him the credit, because there's other people out there selling their own action panels. Tony Kuiper was the original. Tony Kuiper is probably even responsible for, in Lightroom and Camera Raw now, there's the range masks you can use. Those are luminosity masks. So Tony Kuiper pretty much came up with something that Photoshop themselves have implemented. So he's a friend, and I'll always buy his products.
Ryan, do you carry double bodies or single body while?
It depends on the trip. On long trips where I'm away from home and you know, basically when I leave the States, I bring 2 bodies, bring my D800 and my D850. That helps a lot in Africa, because you know, with wildlife stuff, I can shoot wide and long, which I don't do wildlife, but on the rare occasion I do, it helps. Also within helicopters, shooting from helicopters, having 2 bodies, you know, 1 wide, 1 long, you can switch back and forth quick, and they don't want you changing lenses in helicopters. But sometimes I'll bring 1 body just as a backup in case I happen to break a camera on a trip, but most of the time it's just 1 camera. I've never broken a camera, so knock on wood, it doesn't happen anytime soon. But yeah, so it's normally just 1, but special occasions too.
Are you a fan of filters or you don't use them?
I used to use graduated filters, but now dynamic range is so good, and being able to blend exposures so seamlessly, I've not found a reason to use neutral density, graduated neutral density filters in years. The only one time I've missed them in the past handful of years is shooting the lava, because there's already such a dynamic range between sky, lava, dark rocks, that and the lava changes so much, and the plume of steam changes so much that sometimes it's hard to blend those exposures together, because within 1 second, the whole scene looks different. So that's kind of the only time I felt I missed graduated neutral density filters. But otherwise, yeah, I use this polarizer maybe 30% of the time, and I use just regular neutral density filters maybe 1% of the time, just in certain scenarios where I need it. Slow water down and bright daylight or something.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan, thanks a lot. We've shared your discount code as well, 35% on all Ryan.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Any period for this discount code?
What's that?
Any validity till when they can avail?
No, it's going to be up. Any video for as long as you want. That code will be up there. So
wow,
there's no rush. It's on any video.
So wonderful.
That's wonderful,
yeah.
Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I got to say thank you to you fine fellas for putting up with me for the past 2 hours and 15 minutes. I appreciate.
We enjoyed. We can carry on, but we are letting you sleep.
Yeah. So, but I appreciate you allowing me to come on to your channel and your.
Dad's awake still watching this, so you had to end. It's
yeah.
Ungodly hour.
Dad, I love you. Thanks for watching. I didn't know you were gonna watch, but yeah, fellas, thank you so much for the.
Yeah, just a minute. Can you stop sharing and then we can. I'll just take.
Oh yes. How do I
stop sharing?
Zoom. That's not Zoom.
Hope you had a good time, Ryan, with us.
Just a minute. Yeah.
I did. I had a great time. I can't figure out how to stop sharing. Zoom. Sorry, fellas, I can't figure this out.
There's a share screen icon in the bottom. You can click there and then you can stop probably.
In the bottom.
In the Zoom meeting.
Or try Alt S. Try Alt S.
Alt S. I got nothing, fellas.
Oops.
Let me minimize everything.
Wow, that's a nice. Warp.
I see. I'm sorry, guys. I don't see anywhere where to stop share. If this were my job and this is a meeting at a company, I'd be fired by now, wouldn't I? Yeah, I don't see anywhere to stop share, fellas. But
it's okay. It's okay.
Right.
Just leave it. So
okay. Well.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Soom, for felicitating this. Atanu, Prakash, Sandeep Mathur, and all those wonderful participants out there for almost with us for more than a couple of hours, and that's been amazing. That's been amazing. It shows how popular you are. It shows.
Yep. Well,
and thank you for the discount code as well. And
well, it's been one of the best interviews I've had. Very insightful questions, very nice people. So I appreciate the hospitality and having me on.
Thank you. Okay, bye then.
All right, guys. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Have a good day. All right, bye, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.